So in TerraForge, there are 9 different card types. I'm going to explain the card types first, then I'll explain the board, and then I'll explain the turn order, as well as the creation phase. Once that's done, we'll jump right in and get started. So when you build a TerraForge deck, you're going to select a Transcendent, something that represents you, the player, as an interdimensional deity. Somebody who controls fate but influences the lives of mortals and kind of gives a chance at survival when all things are lost. So in TerraForge, you are playing as the Transcendent, and you are guiding a faction or a duo of factions to a new universe through something called the TerraForge. And in our TTS mod, these starting 7 tiles are our TerraForges. TerraForges are a ancient device that allows you to cast the memories of your world and everything you know into the void. And as a new universe is being birthed, you create the land that your people need to live on. You create the people who live on that land. You create the tools that they need, all by casting your memories and sacrificing those memories that you once had to give life to the things that you care about in this new universe. Because, as we all know, the universe is dying, just as it's growing. So it's kind of a tragic cycle, but many of the factions that you'll meet in TerraForge have withstood this cycle repeatedly and have actually evolved and survived through the multiverse's death cycle. As a Transcendent, you have a ability on top of your card that represents what you do to influence the universe that you're aligned with. So in this case, whenever you would draw 2 or more cards, you may draw an additional card. That is always active for you as long as you are key close. Then you have a once per game ability, which allows you to place a single land tile 3 times. In this game, you're going to be placing land tiles constantly. Every card in the game can be played as a land card. When you play it as a land card, the shape at the bottom of the card is the shape that you would create on the board. So you can mirror, you can rotate these, as long as they touch another tile that you control, it is a legal placement. Next up is something new that we're testing, which are biomes. Normally in a game of TerraForge, there would be a starting land card token, but one of the things we're testing now is when you build your deck, you choose a biome associated with one of the factions that leads your deck. In this case, Starry Field is the Zodiac biome, and it allows, at the start of each player's turn, that player looks at the top X cards of their deck and places them back on top in any order. X is the number of ally units on Starry Fields. So what that means is certain lands, you saw the black lands before, now the hollow lands can be placed actually covering other land tiles. And you would create a biome in this instance. So if I then got a unit on top of that biome, this effect would trigger at the start of the turn. Biomes are neutrally beneficial. They help both you and the opponent, so you have to be careful about where you place them. And it brings a lot of strategy to the board in this game. I should probably explain how you win the game, but that would be crazy talk. So in TerraForge, you're going to build out tiles, and you're going to take turns going back and forth. And as your life increases, each tile you place is a new life point. When you take damage or when a unit dies on a tile, you're going to take corruption and place that corruption on any tile you control. If a unit dies, that tile that the unit stood on needs to be corrupted. So, as you could see, my health, in this case the yellow, was being counted by some neat programming by a friend in the board game design community. But all it means is that for each tile you place, you go up 1 health. When your tiles are fully corrupted, you lose the game. So if I am to corrupt this last tile, you can see I have 1 life left, then it's game over. Your TerraForge is always the last tile that you can corrupt. It's important to note that so that there's always somewhere that you can be attacked from. Next up, I want to teach about the card types that you're going to use actively while you play the game. So each card has a cost in the top left and a land type in the bottom center. So to play any card as a land, you're going to take it and put it in your land zone. When you use a land or exhaust it, you're going to turn it sideways. That's going to produce 1 energy. So to play something like Battle of the Pantheon, I would need 7 land cards in my land zone, and I would have to tap each one for 1 energy. That seems like a daunting task, but you'll see that TerraForge is a bit of a fast-paced game, and will start you out with 4 lands on your first turn. So it doesn't take that long to get your biggest, baddest spells. Starting out, we have our non-permanent cards. These are Spellbursts and Rites. So Rites are your slower speed, non-permanent cards. They can only be played on your main phase. You play a Rite, it does its thing, it goes to the discard pile. You cannot play them in response to things, you can only play them as the first part in a chain. Spellbursts can be played in response to any activation, declaration, or phase shift. There is a stack in this game, so if I were to play Battle of the Pantheon and you were to play Connect the Stars on top of it, we would resolve Connect the Stars first. That would do its thing, and then it would go to the discard pile, and then Battle for the Pantheon would do its thing and go to the discard pile. Is there anything I'm missing on Rites and Spellbursts, Darius?
The only thing I'd be considering is the fact that Spellbursts can be played on either player's turn.
Yes.
So Rites you can only play on your turn. They're equivalent to sorceries in Magic or Spell Speed 2, Yu-Gi-Oh! But Spellbursts are better than instants. You can play them in response to basically any action on either player's turn.
After our non-permanent cards, we're going to get into our permanent cards. These stay around until something destroys them, or in some cases attacks them. So, starting out, we have Relics, and we have Glyphs. Relics attach to a player, so in this case they would go under your Transcendent, and they do something really powerful that is really hard to get rid of. In this case, you can play an additional land card each turn, and corruption you take is reduced by 1. Those are going to hang around. There are, at present, only 2 or 3 cards in the game that interact and destroy relics. Glyphs, however, attach to a unit. So, if this unit was over here, you would get this ability on the unit that you enchant. Think like auras in Magic or equipment in other games. These are going to attach to the unit, and then in this case, targeted unit gets double its attack and sacrifice this unit at the end of the turn. You can play Glyphs on either player's unit, yours or the opponent's, and the effect will still take place. So in this case, sacrifice this unit at the end of the turn. You could play it on an opponent's creature as a kill spell, or you could play it on your own creature to do a really big hit on your turn. When a unit dies or is removed from the battlefield, any glyphs attached to them go to the discard pile. Next up, we have our Rule Breaker, which is terrain cards. Terrain cards are special lands that have abilities while they're in the land zone. All of your land cards effectively become a land card token. They exhaust this card for 1 energy. That's it. When you play a terrain card, however, it's going to maintain its effect. So when this land card is exhausted, return a unit from your discard pile to your hand. If that unit does not match the faction as this card, take 1 damage. So factions are listed in the top right of the card. I'll get into that on a future stream when we talk about deck building some. But for right now, if you're playing the Zodiac deck as your starter deck, it's usually going to be all Zodiac, so you won't have to worry about that damage. The cool thing about terrain cards is because you're paying for them, you always have to pay their cost to play them, unless something cheats them out. But you get to play them in addition to your regular land drop for the turn. So I could play a land, and then I could spend 6 energy to cast Lost Constellation. That would give me 2 land drops in a single turn, which would increase my life usually by at least 6 points, as well as giving me extra energy for future turns, and the ability listed on the terrain card. So they're built-in ramp as well as effect taxis. They carry some really powerful abilities sometimes, and I like them. They're a cool card. Darius, would you say there's anything I missed on these 3 card types?
No, I think you covered everything pretty well. Just to reiterate, usually you only get to play 1 card from your hand as a land card per turn, but the fact that you can play terrains in addition to that, both, one, as Pat said, help your life total, but they also serve very well for ramp strategies. The decks that we're playing today don't really play too much into ramp strategies, but certain factions have several different terrain cards, and they can hit large energy totals very quickly.
Finally, we have our units, and we have our structures. So structures just recently got a new change, but unit cards have 4 stats at the bottom of the card. We have 3 move on this card, 1 range, 7 attack, and 6 defense. Your movement is how many tiles you can move on the board. So let's say Taurus was here. He's got 3 movement, 1, 2, 3. He can attack 1 tile away from him. So any of those 4 tiles would be eligible targets to attack. He would deal 7 damage to whoever he attacks. And he would be able to take up to 6 damage back without... Once 6 damage is achieved, he would be destroyed. Anything 7 or less would be destroyed that he is attacking. If you are unable during an entire turn to deal enough damage, at the end of the turn, health resets. Or defense resets, I should say. Health is now a new term in the game, so I got to be careful about that. So if you dealt 5 damage to him in 1 turn, and you weren't able to finish him off, next turn you'd have to deal 6 damage all over again. So outside of unit cards, we have structures. Structures create a structured token when they're created. These will match the artwork of the cards in the final production and have their stat listed on them. For now, we just use a barricade token. And we are testing that structures have permanent health. So when you take damage on a structure, it's going to be recorded, and that will not heal at the end of the turn. Structures are like relics in every other sense. They hang out by your Transcendent. The token goes on the board, and it creates an obstacle that the opponent can't pass through. They have to either fly over or destroy it. And it gives an effect either nearby or across the board, as long as that structure exists. Those are the card types for TerraForge. If anybody has any questions in chat, feel free to ask while I move on to explain the next part, which is the board. So in the board, we have 2 main features. So you have your TerraForge, which is your starting 7 tiles back here. Then you have your Power Nexus, which are these 3 tiles in the corners. If I were to get a unit on top of the purple Power Nexus, or the purple player got a unit on top of the yellow Power Nexus, what would happen is twofold. 1, you would get that overwhelm ability that Taurus had on all of your units. Second, when you attack a player directly via a source, you would deal double damage. So that Taurus with 7 attack that we saw earlier would now have 14 damage directly to the player. Power Nexuses give you those 2 benefits. Your other units get overwhelm, and when you deal damage to a source, you're going to deal double damage instead. The third thing I want to teach about the board is whenever you create 7 tiles in this shape, 6 surrounding 1 tile that you control, you're going to create a new source. Sources come in with a 5-point force field. That force field counts as 5 defense for the source. You would have to be able to deal 5 damage in a single turn to destroy that shield. Once the shield is destroyed, it's gone for good, and then you can attack the source underneath directly. Sources can be corrupted, in which case they're shut down and can no longer be attacked. But while they are uncorrupted, you can summon units adjacent to them, and your opponent can attack them directly. There's 2 important things about combat that can happen. One is, let's pretend that I was purple for this example, and I wanted to defend the yellow source for some reason. When you move with a unit and you don't attack, you can rotate the card 180 degrees and declare it as taunting. A taunting unit redirects any attack that has range on this unit to attack that unit instead of what they wanted to attack. So if there's a taunting unit, you have to attack it if you declare an attack in range. The other thing that I want to teach is supporting. So let's say that we're back to yellow player now. 2 and 3 are on the board. And let's say that purple 2 was a 9/9. Big, beefy creature. You know, really strong, really hard to kill. I could throw my 2/2 at it, and then I could throw my 7/6 at it, and I would lose both of my units. Or I can do what's called a supporting attack, where I declare an attack with either of my units, and as long as the other unit has range on the target of the attack, they can add their attack power by exhausting. So this case, I would add the 7 attack power to the token's 2 attack power, and I would have 9 damage coming at the 9/9. The 9/9 can only attack one of my units back instead of killing both of them. So it's a good defensive thing when you're offensively killing things to team up and support if something is overwhelming you and you would lose all of your units. The last thing is those new land types. So let's say I played that land as a yellow. I could cover up other tiles as long as I create the same diamond shape, because these are hollow design. If they were filled in like this, I could only place them on void tiles, which are the open space. The cool thing is, though, if I wanted to place these tiles here, for instance, I could actually make a biome on the opponent's land. Because that's one of their tiles, I don't gain control of it. I would simply create a biome of their color. That's a new rule we're testing. You'll see that hopefully come up tonight. But that's it for the board. Now the quickest part about the teach, the turn. Turn has 3 phases. We have the refresh phase, where all of your cards that are exhausted become unexhausted, and we have nice little untapper button to help facilitate that. Then you have your main phase. In your main phase, you can do 3 things in any order, and you can do those things repeatedly with the exception of playing a land card. So you can play a single land card each turn, creating that land type on the battlefield. You can spend energy to cast spells, which are units and essence cards. So Say I spend those 3, I could play this card because that is a 3 cost. Or if I have a unit, I can activate each unit once per turn. Activating means to move and then choose to attack. Either of these can be skipped, but it's always move first and then attack. Then you end the turn by drawing 2 cards and passing to your opponent. That's the entire turn phase structure. The only other thing to teach is what we call the creation phase, which me and Darius are about to jump into if there's no questions in chat.
There's no questions in chat, but just one thing I want to call out. Biome, those transparent tiles that can create biomes are also special in that you, as Pat said, you can build them on top of the opponent's lands. Usually, whenever you're placing a land card, it must be adjacent to one of your own tiles, and that is still the case for a biome, so long as the shape that you're placing is adjacent to at least one of your uncorrupted tiles. You could place the entirety of that biome or those transparent tiles on the opponent's lands.